Most prisons count time in years. Bang Kwang counts it in deaths. Before the sun rises over Nonthaburi province, before traffic clogs the roads leading out of Bangkok, men inside Bang Kwang prison wake up to the same thought. Will I survive this place? Some have been asking that question for decades. Others will never get the chance to ask it again. This is not a fictional nightmare. This is not exaggeration for drama. Bang Kwang Prison, known around the world as the Bangkok Hilton, is a real place, and its reputation was earned through years of documented suffering, overcrowding, harsh sentencing laws, and a justice system that moves slowly, if it moves at all. For thousands of inmates, Bang Kwang is not just a prison. It is a waiting room for death. Bang Kwang Central Prison sits just north of Bangkok, hidden behind concrete walls topped with razor wire and watchtowers. From the outside, it looks like many other maximum security prisons. From the inside, it is something else entirely. Foreign inmates, Thai prisoners, human rights observers, and former guards have all described it using the same words: unforgiving, brutal, and relentlessly dehumanizing. The prison was opened in 1931, during a period when Thailand was modernizing its legal system. Over time, Bang Kwang became the country's primary facility for housing inmates sentenced to death or extremely long prison terms. For decades, it was where Thailand sent people it believed would never return to society. That legacy still defines the prison today. What makes Bang Kwang infamous is not a single incident, but a system. A system where overcrowding became normal. A system where prisoners spent years in leg irons. A system where executions were once carried out inside the same walls where inmates ate, slept, and waited. And a system where many prisoners did not fully understand their fate until it was already sealed. Bang Kwang's population has always exceeded its intended capacity. At various points in its history, the prison held more than twice the number of inmates it was designed for. Cells built for a few men often held dozens. In some dormitories, prisoners slept shoulder to shoulder on concrete floors, with barely enough room to turn over. Privacy did not exist. Silence was rare. The smell of sweat, sewage, and decay became part of daily life. Food was another daily reminder of where inmates stood in the hierarchy of Thai society. Meals were basic and repetitive. Rice, thin vegetable soup, and occasionally small pieces of meat or fish. Malnutrition was common, especially among prisoners who had no family support on the outside. In Thailand, families are expected to supplement prison food by bringing meals, money, or supplies. Foreign inmates, far from home, often had no one to help them. Their bodies weakened long before their sentences ended. For prisoners sentenced to death, life inside Bang Kwang followed a different rhythm, one defined by uncertainty and fear. Thailand's death penalty laws were strict, particularly during the late 20th and early 21st centuries, when drug-related offenses carried mandatory death sentences. Many inmates arrived at Bang Kwang after being convicted of drug trafficking, often involving heroin or methamphetamine. Some were couriers. Others claimed they were unknowingly used as mules. Once sentenced, appeals could take years, sometimes decades. During this waiting period, death row inmates were placed in leg irons, heavy metal shackles connecting both ankles. These were not symbolic restraints. They were real, painful, and constant. Prisoners slept in them, walked in them, and ate in them. The irons caused open wounds, infections, and permanent damage to joints. Some inmates described the sound of chains moving through the corridors as a constant reminder of where they stood, alive, but already condemned. Executions at Bang Kwang were once carried out by machine gun. Prisoners were tied to wooden crosses and shot by firing squad. Later, Thailand switched to lethal injection, but executions continued within the prison complex until the early 2000s. On execution days, the entire prison knew. The atmosphere changed. Guards moved differently. Prisoners spoke less. Death was not hidden, it was felt. One of the most haunting aspects of Bang Kwang's history is how close the living and the condemned were kept. Death row inmates could hear the daily routines of the general population. They listened to laughter, arguments, and footsteps, knowing their own time was measured differently. Some prisoners marked the passing years by counting how many executions happened around them. Others stopped counting altogether. Foreign inmates played a major role in shaping Bang Kwang's international reputation. Throughout the 1980s, 1990s, and early 2000s, Thailand's strict drug laws led to the imprisonment of many foreigners from Europe, Australia, Africa, and the Americas. Language barriers made survival even harder. Many did not fully understand court proceedings. Legal representation was often limited. Appeals were slow, and misunderstandings were common. Several former foreign inmates later spoke publicly about their time in Bang Kwang, describing a system that felt impossible to escape. They talked about beatings, corruption, and psychological pressure, but also about moments of humanity. Prisoners sharing food, teaching each other languages, and forming fragile communities inside the walls. These stories painted a complex picture, a brutal institution that still contained human beings struggling to survive. Despite its fearsome reputation, Bang Kwang was not lawless chaos. It operated under strict routines. Prisoners woke early, lined up for roll call, and followed rigid schedules. Guards enforced discipline, sometimes harshly, sometimes inconsistently. Punishments ranged from isolation to loss of privileges. While reforms in recent years have reduced some of the most extreme practices, the legacy of brutality still defines how Bang Kwang is perceived. In the mid-2000s, international pressure and internal reform efforts led Thailand to make changes to its prison system. The use of leg irons for death row inmates was reduced. Executions became less frequent, and in 2018 Thailand carried out its first execution in nearly a decade, sparking renewed global criticism. Bang Kwang itself began transitioning some death row inmates to other facilities, but the prison's symbolic status as Thailand's death prison remained. For many inmates, the most painful part of Bang Kwang was not physical suffering, but time. Time moved slowly, stretched endlessly by uncertainty. Appeals could take 10, 15, or 20 years. Prisoners lived in a state of suspension, unable to plan, unable to hope fully, unable to let go. Mental health issues were widespread. Depression, anxiety, and despair became invisible cellmates. Families on the outside suffered too. Visiting Bang Kwang was an ordeal. Strict rules limited physical contact. Visits were short, monitored, and emotionally draining. For foreign families, distance and cost made visits rare or impossible. Some inmates went years without seeing a familiar face. Letters became lifelines, carrying fragments of a world that felt increasingly unreal. The nickname Bangkok Hilton is often misunderstood. It is not a compliment or a joke. It is bitter irony. The name reflects the gap between how prisons are sometimes portrayed in movies and how Bang Kwang exists in reality. There is no luxury here, no comfort, only survival. Yet Bang Kwang is more than its worst moments. It is also a mirror of Thailand's legal system, its drug policies, and its struggle to balance punishment with reform. Over the years, activists and officials have pushed for change. Educational programs, vocational training, and limited rehabilitation efforts have been introduced. Some prisoners have found purpose teaching others, creating art, or learning new skills. These efforts do not erase the suffering, but they show that even in the harshest environments, people adapt. Chapter 1 of Bang Kwang's story is about reality, not myth. It is about a prison built to contain society's most feared criminals, and how that mission shaped every aspect of life inside its walls. It is about laws that left little room for mercy, and a system that valued punishment over rehabilitation for decades. And it is about human beings, guilty and innocent, foreign and Thai, caught inside a machine that moved slowly and crushed many along the way. This is only the beginning. The deeper story of Bang Kwang lies in the daily lives of its prisoners, the specific cases that shock the world, and the long-term consequences of policies that turned a prison into a symbol of fear. To understand Bang Kwang fully, we must go inside the cells, inside the courtrooms, and inside the minds of those who lived through it. For prisoners on death row at Bang Kwang, the sentence was not simply death. It was waiting to find everything, waiting to hear the outcome of an appeal, waiting for a name to be called, waiting for footsteps in the corridor that might stop at their cell. In Bang Kwang, death row was not a single moment at the end of a sentence. It was a condition of daily life, stretching endlessly forward year after year. Thailand's use of the death penalty, particularly during the late 20th century, shaped Bang Kwang into what it became. For decades, the country enforced some of the harshest drug laws in the world. Trafficking above certain quantities carried mandatory death sentences. Judges often had little discretion. Once convicted, the outcome was nearly predetermined. Many inmates arrived at Bang Kwang already broken by the legal process. Court hearings were fast. Translation services were inconsistent. Some defendants did not fully understand the charges against them or the consequences they faced. For foreign nationals, the courtroom felt alien and overwhelming. By the time the verdict was read, life had already split into a before and an after. Death row inmates were separated from the general prison population not for safety, but for control. Their cells were more restrictive. Their movements were limited. And for many years, they were forced to wear leg irons, thick metal shackles weighing several kilograms, locked permanently around the ankles. These chains were not removed at night. Prisoners slept with them digging into their skin. They used the toilet with them clanking against the floor. They learned to walk with a slow, painful shuffle. Over time, the irons caused infections, muscle atrophy, and nerve damage. Medical care was minimal. Pain became background noise. Former inmates described the sound of chains as the soundtrack of death row. Every movement echoed. Every step reminded them, and everyone around them, of their status. The chains were psychological weapons as much as physical restraints. They stripped away dignity and replaced it with humiliation. Cells on death row were crowded, poorly ventilated, and dimly lit. Natural light was limited. Air circulation was weak. During Thailand's hot season, temperatures inside the cells became unbearable. Sweat soaked the floor. Breathing felt heavy. Some prisoners fainted from heat exhaustion. Others simply lay still, conserving energy. There were no clocks. Time had to be measured differently. Some prisoners counted days by meals. Others marked weeks by visits. Many stopped counting altogether. Without a clear execution date, the mind drifted between hope and terror, unable to settle on either. Executions in Bang Kwang were not secret. While prisoners were not told exact dates far in advance, rumors spread quickly. Guards behaved differently. Administrative routines shifted. Prisoners paid close attention to small changes. Doors opening at unusual hours, unfamiliar officials entering the wing, unusual silence during roll call. On execution mornings, condemned prisoners were often woken before dawn. For those left behind, the hours that followed were some of the longest they would ever experience. They listened, they waited, and then eventually they knew. For many years, Thailand carried out executions by firing squad. Prisoners were taken to an execution chamber within the prison grounds. They were restrained, blindfolded, and tied to a wooden structure. The execution was swift, but the buildup was not. The knowledge that death occurred just meters away from their cells left a permanent psychological scar on those who survived. In 2003, Thailand transitioned to lethal injection, citing humanitarian concerns. The method changed, but the fear did not. Executions continued sporadically, often after long gaps, which made them even more terrifying. Prisoners never knew when the state would decide to act again. What made Bang Kwang especially cruel was the uncertainty. In some countries, death row inmates are given execution dates. In Bang Kwang, many were left in limbo for decades. Appeals moved slowly through the courts. Royal pardons were possible but rare. Legal reforms sometimes changed sentencing laws, but not always retroactively. Some prisoners entered death row in their 20s and reached their 50s still waiting. Their bodies aged in chains. Their minds learned to survive on fragments of hope. For some, hope came from religion. Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and other faiths provided structure in a place where structure was otherwise imposed from above. Religious services were among the few moments when prisoners could gather without fear of punishment. Monks, priests, and imams occasionally visited the prison, offering counseling and prayer. For some inmates, these visits became the only reminder that the outside world still existed. Foreign prisoners faced additional challenges. Language barriers isolated them from Thai inmates. Cultural misunderstandings caused conflict. Access to embassies varied widely depending on nationality and diplomatic relations. Some embassies provided legal assistance and regular visits. Others did very little. Media attention played a role in survival. High-profile cases sometimes led to international pressure, appeals, or sentence commutations. Lesser-known prisoners remained invisible. For every name that appeared in headlines, dozens of others waited in silence. The psychological toll of death row life was immense. Prisoners reported hallucinations, panic attacks, and deep depression. Suicide attempts were not uncommon. Mental health care was limited, and stigma prevented many from seeking help even when it was available. Despite the environment, relationships formed. Death row inmates shared stories, food, and survival strategies. Older prisoners advised younger ones on how to endure. Some taught languages or basic literacy skills. In a place designed to strip individuality, these small acts of connection mattered. Food on death row was no different from the rest of the prison, but access was more restricted. Without family support, prisoners relied entirely on prison rations. Hunger was constant. Malnutrition weakened immune systems, making inmates vulnerable to disease. Medical treatment was basic and often delayed. Healthcare in Bang Kwang reflected broader issues in Thailand's prison system. Doctors were few. Medications were limited. Serious illnesses sometimes went untreated for months. For death row inmates, medical neglect felt especially cruel. They were being kept alive just long enough to die later. In some cases, legal changes altered the fate of death row prisoners. Thailand revised its drug laws, allowing judges more discretion in sentencing. Some death sentences were commuted to life imprisonment. For prisoners who had spent years in chains, the news brought mixed emotions. Relief was tempered by anger and exhaustion. Life imprisonment in Bang Kwang was still severe, but it offered something death row did not: a future, however limited. Prisoners removed their leg irons for the first time in years. Some struggled to walk without them. The chains had shaped their bodies as much as their minds. Yet even commutation did not guarantee safety. Overcrowding, violence, and disease continued to threaten daily survival. Bang Kwang remained a harsh environment, even as policies slowly shifted. For guards, death row was also a burden. Some officers described emotional detachment as a coping mechanism. Others admitted the job changed them permanently. Carrying out executions or supervising condemned prisoners required emotional suppression. The system demanded obedience, not reflection. International human rights organizations repeatedly criticized Thailand's use of the death penalty and conditions at Bang Kwang. Reports highlighted overcrowding, use of restraints, and lack of mental health care. Thai officials responded with promises of reform, some of which were implemented, others delayed. In 2018, Thailand carried out its first execution in 9 years, reminding the world that the death penalty was still active. Bang Kwang's name resurfaced in global media. For prisoners inside, the execution reopened old wounds. Waiting resumed with renewed intensity. Death row life in Bang Kwang was not defined by violence alone. It was defined by silence, repetition, and time. Days blended together. Weeks lost meaning. The mind adapted in ways that were necessary but damaging. Survival required emotional numbness. Some prisoners wrote letters constantly, even when replies never came. Others stopped writing altogether, unwilling to reopen emotional connections. Memory became both comfort and torment. Recalling life outside brought warmth and pain in equal measure. Bang Kwang's death row was a place where the state's ultimate power, control over life and death, was felt every day. It was not only about punishment, but about endurance. The question was not when death would come, but how long a person could live knowing it might. Chapter 2 reveals Bang Kwang at its most unforgiving, a system that punished not only through execution, but through prolonged psychological suffering. It shows how law, policy, and bureaucracy combined to create a space where time itself became a weapon. But death row is only one part of Bang Kwang's story. Beyond the chains and condemned cells lies a larger population, men serving long sentences, foreigners navigating a foreign system, and daily routines that turn survival into an art. Their stories, and the cases that brought them here, reveal how Bang Kwang became what it is. Not everyone inside Bang Kwang was sentenced to die. Many were sentenced to something that felt just as endless. Life, imprisonment, and extremely long sentences formed the backbone of Bang Kwang's population. Men entered the prison knowing they might never leave, yet unlike death row inmates, they were expected to endure year after year, inside a system never designed for rehabilitation. Survival was no longer about waiting for execution. It was about learning how to live inside a place that slowly erased identity. For prisoners serving life or sentences of 50, 60, or even 100 years, Bang Kwang became an entire world. Outside life faded quickly. News arrived late or not at all. Technology advanced without them. Children grew up, parents aged, and loved ones died while inmates remained locked in the same concrete spaces, following the same routines. Overcrowding defined daily existence. Cells built to hold a limited number of inmates often housed many times that amount. Prisoners slept on thin mats or directly on concrete floors, arranged tightly to maximize space. Movement at night was almost impossible without disturbing others. Heat, noise, and lack of ventilation made rest shallow and inconsistent. Disease spread easily in these conditions. Tuberculosis, skin infections, and respiratory illnesses were persistent threats. Clean water was limited. Toilets were shared and often clogged. Hygiene depended on access to basic supplies, which many inmates could only obtain through family support or informal prison economies. Within Bang Kwang, survival depended on adaptation. New inmates learned quickly that rules existed beyond official regulations. Unwritten codes governed behavior. Respect had to be shown carefully. Conflict could escalate quickly in overcrowded spaces, and violence, though not constant, was always possible. Prison hierarchy emerged naturally. Older prisoners, long-term inmates, and those with connections often held informal authority. Newcomers were vulnerable. Without guidance, mistakes could be costly. Learning when to speak, when to stay silent, and who to avoid was essential. Work assignments offered limited relief. Some prisoners were assigned to kitchen duties, cleaning, or maintenance. These roles came with small privileges, extra food, better movement, or protection. Others worked in workshops, producing handicrafts, clothing, or furniture. These programs were presented as rehabilitation, but they also kept the prison functioning at minimal cost. For inmates without family support, prison labor became a lifeline. Small earnings allowed them to buy soap, toothpaste, or extra food. Without money, survival became harder. Hunger intensified stress. Weakness increased vulnerability to illness. Foreign prisoners faced unique challenges in this environment. Language barriers isolated them from Thai inmates and guards alike. Miscommunication led to misunderstandings and punishment. Some foreigners found solidarity among each other, forming small communities based on shared language or nationality. Others integrated slowly with Thai inmates, learning the language out of necessity. Those who succeeded often described it as a turning point. Understanding Thai allowed them to navigate prison politics, avoid conflict, and access limited opportunities. Cultural differences sometimes caused tension. Western expectations of fairness and transparency clashed with a system that relied heavily on hierarchy and discretion. Complaints rarely changed outcomes. Acceptance, rather than resistance, became a survival strategy. Religion played a central role in long-term survival. Bang Kwang allowed limited religious practice, and many inmates turned to faith as structure in a formless existence. Buddhist meditation, Christian prayer, and Islamic routines provided rhythm and meaning. For some, faith was less about belief and more about mental stability. Education programs existed but were limited by resources. Some prisoners learned to read or write for the first time inside Bang Kwang. Others studied languages, law, or philosophy through shared books and informal teaching. Knowledge became a form of escape, one of the few ways to travel beyond prison walls. Despite the harshness, moments of humanity surfaced unexpectedly. Prisoners shared food during shortages. They supported each other during illness. When a loved one died on the outside, fellow inmates offered quiet companionship. These moments did not soften the system, but they revealed resilience within it. Discipline in Bang Kwang was strict and unevenly enforced. Minor infractions could result in punishment, including isolation or loss of privileges. Solitary confinement, though officially regulated, was used as a control measure. In isolation, prisoners faced darkness, silence, and sensory deprivation that could last days or weeks. Mental health deterioration was common. Long-term inmates reported emotional numbness, memory loss, and difficulty concentrating. Some became withdrawn. Others developed explosive tempers. Psychological support was minimal, and stigma discouraged open discussion of mental distress. The legal process offered little comfort. Appeals moved slowly, if at all. Life sentences were rarely revisited. Royal pardons were theoretically possible but unpredictable. Prisoners learned not to rely on legal hope. Hope, when it came, had to be managed carefully to avoid collapse. Visits from family provided emotional lifelines, but also pain. Seeing loved ones reminded inmates of everything they had lost. Visits were short and monitored. Physical contact was restricted. After visits ended, prisoners returned to their cells carrying renewed grief. For those without visitors, isolation deepened. Years passed without hearing a familiar voice. Letters became rare or stopped entirely. The outside world transformed into something abstract, remembered only through fading memories. Bang Kwang also housed inmates who would later become symbols of reform debates. Their cases highlighted inconsistencies in sentencing, the impact of drug laws, and the consequences of mandatory punishment. Advocacy groups used these stories to argue for change, but change moved slowly. Reforms introduced in the 2010s improved some conditions. Educational programs expanded slightly. Medical care saw incremental improvements. Restrictions on restraints were eased. Yet the core reality remained. Bang Kwang was a prison designed to contain, not to heal. For life sentence prisoners, the future was defined not by release, but by endurance. Some set personal goals, learning skills, mentoring younger inmates, or maintaining physical fitness. Others simply focused on making it through each day without breaking. Aging inside Bang Kwang presented new challenges. Older prisoners struggled with mobility, chronic illness, and declining vision. Facilities were not designed for elderly inmates. Medical care for age-related conditions was limited. Dying of natural causes inside the prison was common. Death inside Bang Kwang did not stop routines. When an inmate died, whether from illness or age, the system moved on quickly. Cells were reassigned. Beds were filled. Life continued for those left behind. For many, the hardest realization was that Bang Kwang did not need to be cruel to be devastating. Time alone did the damage. Years without freedom reshaped identity. Prisoners learned to think differently, speak differently, and feel differently. The longer someone stayed, the harder it became to imagine life outside. Even those who eventually received sentence reductions or transfers described fear of freedom. The world beyond the walls had changed too much. Bang Kwang had become familiar, even if it remained unbearable. Chapter 3 exposes the quiet suffering beyond death row, the men who lived long lives inside Bang Kwang, adapting to a system that offered little chance of redemption. Their stories reveal how punishment extended far beyond sentencing, shaping bodies, minds, and identities over decades. Yet Bang Kwang's story cannot be told without examining how people ended up there in the first place. The arrests, trials, and laws that fed the prison reveal a deeper truth about power, justice, and consequence. No one arrived at Bang Kwang by accident. Every prisoner inside its walls passed through a chain of decisions, arrests, interrogations, courtrooms, and laws that often mattered more than the truth itself. To understand Bang Kwang fully, it is necessary to look beyond the prison gates and into Thailand's legal system, particularly during the decades when the prison gained its fearsome reputation. Bang Kwang was not simply a place of punishment. It was a final destination of policies built on fear, deterrence, and zero tolerance. For years, Thailand positioned itself as uncompromising in its war on drugs. Beginning in the late 20th century and intensifying in the 1990s and early 2000s, the government enacted strict narcotics laws designed to send a clear message. Drug trafficking would be met with absolute severity. Mandatory minimum sentences and automatic death penalties were central to this approach. Under these laws, the quantity of drugs mattered more than intent. Possession above certain thresholds triggered life imprisonment or death sentences, regardless of whether the accused was a major trafficker or a low-level courier. Judges had limited discretion. Once guilt was established, punishment followed a predetermined path. Arrests were often swift and aggressive. Airports, border crossings, and transit hubs became focal points for enforcement. Foreign nationals were frequently targeted as international trafficking routes passed through Thailand. Some were experienced smugglers. Others were desperate individuals recruited with promises of easy money, unaware of the full consequences. Interrogations varied widely in quality and fairness. While Thailand's legal system formally prohibited abuse, reports from former defendants and human rights organizations raised concerns about coercion, lack of legal representation, and inadequate translation services. Confessions carried significant weight in court, sometimes overshadowing inconsistencies in evidence. For foreigners, the process was especially disorienting. Legal documents were written in Thai. Court proceedings moved quickly. Translators, when provided, were not always certified or impartial. Some defendants later claimed they did not understand the charges or the potential sentence until after conviction. Trials in serious drug cases were often brief. Evidence focused on physical possession rather than broader context. Questions of coercion, manipulation, or ignorance were rarely decisive. Once convicted, appeals could take years, but the initial verdict set the tone for everything that followed. Sentencing was where Bang Kwang entered the picture. Defendants facing death or extreme sentences were transferred there, sometimes within days of conviction. The speed of transition left little time for emotional processing. Life outside ended abruptly, replaced by the routines of a maximum security prison. Public opinion played a powerful role in shaping these outcomes. During periods of heightened fear about drugs and crime, harsh punishment was widely supported. Politicians framed severe sentences as necessary for national security and social order. In this climate, mercy was often equated with weakness. Bang Kwang became a symbol of this philosophy. Its reputation reinforced the state's message. Thailand was not a safe place for serious criminals. The prison's existence served as a deterrent, both domestically and internationally. Yet deterrence came at a cost. Over time, cracks in the system became harder to ignore. Advocacy groups documented cases of disproportionate sentencing, procedural flaws, and inconsistent application of the law. Stories emerged of individuals sentenced to death for roles that appeared minor compared to larger trafficking networks that remained untouched. Royal pardons and sentence commutations introduced another layer of complexity. In Thailand, the monarchy holds the power to grant clemency, often on national holidays or special occasions. For prisoners, these pardons represented hope, but hope that was unpredictable and opaque. Some inmates saw their sentences reduced after decades. Others were passed over repeatedly without explanation. The lack of transparency fueled frustration and despair. Prisoners struggled to understand why one person received mercy while another did not. Legal reforms began slowly. International pressure, changing public attitudes, and internal reviews prompted adjustments to sentencing laws. Judges were eventually granted more discretion in drug cases. Mandatory death penalties were reduced. Life sentences replaced executions in some instances. However, reform rarely applied retroactively. Thousands of inmates remained incarcerated under older laws, serving sentences that no longer aligned with current standards. Bang Kwang continued to house men condemned by a legal past that the country was gradually moving away from. The justice system's relationship with Bang Kwang was not just about punishment, it was about control. Long sentences reduced the need for rehabilitation planning. Overcrowding was managed through containment rather than reform. The prison absorbed the consequences of legal rigidity. For families, the legal process was equally devastating. Many learned of convictions through brief phone calls or official notices. Appeals required money, connections, and persistence. Poor families were often unable to pursue extended legal battles. Justice became unevenly accessible. Embassies and foreign governments sometimes intervened, but success depended on diplomatic leverage and public visibility. High-profile cases attracted attention. Lesser-known prisoners remained invisible, their stories confined to prison walls. Judges and prosecutors also operated under pressure. Career advancement depended on conviction rates. Leniency could attract criticism. In this environment, the system rewarded severity over nuance. By the time an individual reached Bang Kwang, their fate had often been sealed long before. The prison did not decide guilt or innocence. It enforced decisions made elsewhere. Yet for prisoners, Bang Kwang embodied the entire system. It became the face of justice, whether deserved or flawed. Critics argued that Bang Kwang exposed the limits of punishment as policy. Harsh sentences did not eliminate drug trafficking. Overcrowded prisons strained resources. Human suffering increased without corresponding public benefit. Supporters of the system countered that strict enforcement preserved order and deterred crime. They viewed Bang Kwang as a necessary institution in a dangerous world. The debate remained unresolved. What became clear, however, was that Bang Kwang was not an isolated institution. It was a final link in a chain of laws, decisions, and attitudes that reflected Thailand's evolving relationship with crime and punishment. Chapter 4 reveals that the brutality of Bang Kwang did not begin at the prison gate. It began in legislation, courtrooms, and political rhetoric. The prison was the consequence, not the cause. Yet systems change and institutions evolve. In recent years, Bang Kwang has entered a new phase, one shaped by reform, scrutiny, and uncertainty about its future role. Bang Kwang Prison was built to be permanent, yet nothing about it remains untouched by time. In recent years, the prison has entered a quiet transformation, not through dramatic closures or sweeping announcements, but through gradual shifts in policy, pressure, and perception. The chains that once defined Bang Kwang's identity have been loosened, but their imprint remains on everyone who passed through its gates. Thailand's broader approach to punishment has evolved. International scrutiny, domestic debate, and changing political priorities forced the country to reconsider how justice should be administered. The most visible symbol of change came with reductions in the use of the death penalty and reforms to sentencing laws. Mandatory death sentences for many drug offenses were removed, giving judges greater discretion. For Bang Kwang, this meant a changing population. Fewer prisoners arrived with death sentences. Some long-term death row inmates were transferred to other facilities or had their sentences commuted. The infamous leg irons, once synonymous with the prison, were largely eliminated for condemned prisoners. For those who had worn them for years, their removal was both relief and shock. Former inmates described the first days without chains as disorienting. Walking felt unfamiliar. Balance had to be relearned. The body remembered restraint long after the metal was gone. Psychological freedom lagged behind physical change. Executions became rare. The long gaps between them created uncertainty rather than comfort. For prisoners, the question shifted from when to if. Waiting did not end, it simply changed shape. Conditions inside Bang Kwang improved in measurable but limited ways. Access to medical care increased slightly. Educational and vocational programs expanded. Oversight became more visible. These changes mattered, but they did not erase decades of neglect or overcrowding. For many inmates, reform arrived too late. Years lost could not be recovered. Families had fragmented. Health had deteriorated. Time had done its work. Even when release became possible, reintegration posed new challenges. Former prisoners who left Bang Kwang often spoke of difficulty adjusting to life outside. The world had moved on. Technology, social norms, and relationships felt foreign. Freedom carried anxiety. Some struggled with isolation and trauma. Bang Kwang did not release people unchanged. It released survivors marked by long confinement. The prison's legacy also lived on through memory. Books, interviews, and documentaries shared first-hand accounts of life inside. These stories shaped global perceptions of Thailand's justice system and fueled ongoing debate about punishment and reform. Bang Kwang became more than a prison, it became a symbol. For Thai society, that symbol was uncomfortable. Bang Kwang reflected a period defined by fear-based policy and rigid enforcement. Acknowledging its past required confronting difficult truths about how justice had been applied and who paid the price. Human rights organizations continued to monitor the prison, using it as a benchmark for progress. Improvements were acknowledged, but criticism remained. Overcrowding persisted. Long sentences continued to dominate. Rehabilitation efforts, while expanded, remained limited compared to the scale of incarceration. Inside the prison, life continued in its familiar rhythms. New inmates arrived. Older ones aged. Daily routines persisted. Change was slow, incremental, and uneven. For those still inside, the future remained uncertain. Bang Kwang's role within Thailand's prison system also evolved. It was no longer the primary execution site, but it remained a high-security facility for serious offenders. Its name still carried weight. Fear still followed it. Yet within its walls, something subtle shifted. Conversations about rehabilitation became more common. Educational achievements were recognized. Programs aimed at reducing reoffending gained support. These efforts did not transform Bang Kwang into a humane institution, but they hinted at a different direction. The question facing Thailand was not whether Bang Kwang would continue to exist, but what it would represent. Would it remain a monument to punishment, or become part of a system that balanced accountability with reform? For the men who lived and died inside Bang Kwang, that question came too late. Their stories formed the foundation of the prison's reputation. Their suffering defined its image. Remembering them was not about sensationalism. It was about accountability. Bang Kwang's history serves as a warning about what happens when policy prioritizes severity over proportionality and deterrence over humanity. It shows how institutions can normalize suffering in the name of order, and how difficult it is to reverse that process once it takes hold. At the same time, its evolution demonstrates that systems can change, even slowly. Reforms, however imperfect, show recognition that the past was flawed. Progress may be incremental, but it matters to those still living within the system. Today, Bang Kwang stands as both a prison and a memory. Its walls still hold men serving long sentences. Its name still evokes fear, but its future remains unwritten. Whether it becomes a relic of an older justice system or a stepping stone toward a more balanced approach depends on choices made far beyond its gates by lawmakers, judges, and society itself. Bang Kwang was once defined by chains, silence, and waiting. What defines it next will shape how it is remembered. And that is the final reality of Thailand's most feared prison.